Hi, welcome to English 6 week 7. This week we're going to be talking about two really useful topics. One is polite requests and the second is indirect questions. We're going to start with polite requests. A request is a question or something, or a petition, something that we want to ask. And here we have two sentences. What would you say the difference is? We have here, I need to open the window. Could I open the window? Pass the salt, or could you please pass me the salt? Or, as it says here, could you pass me the salt, please? If you see, both are different. They have the same idea, but the tone is different. In the first one, like, I need to open the window, this is just a command. The same with pass the salt. And they are less polite. In everyday situations, you have to be polite and you have to be very careful with the way in which we express ourselves. So that's why we can use polite requests just like this. Could I open the window? Could you pass me the salt, please? And here we have one kind of polite request, which is you asking for permission. For example, when you're using I. So you make a polite request. It's really easy. You just have to add some phrases to what you would normally say. Here we have some words in order of least to most formal. They're all polite, but the level of formality is different. For example, we have can, which is less formal, could or may, they are the same, and might, which is super formal. Here are some examples. Can I borrow some money? You can ask this to your sister, to your friend. It's very informal. Could I borrow some money? Or may I borrow some money? This is a little bit more formal. And we have something that is very formal and that we don't always use, which is might I borrow some money? And in this case, it is very formal, as I said. It's not very common. Here we have another phrase for asking permission, which is, would you mind if I... The meaning is very similar to saying, is it okay if... Here is an example. Would you mind if I open the window? This is exactly the same as saying, is it okay if I open the window? And you can use this phrase for asking permission for anything. Would you mind if I take your pen? Is it okay if I take your pen for a second? And you form it in a very easy way. We have would, you have you, mind, if, and then you start with your subject. In this case, it is I, your verb in base form, and then the complement. Would you mind if I take your pen? Would you mind if I open the door? Would you mind if I take this? It's very simple. And we have other kinds of polite requests, which is when you're asking for a favor, basically. You're asking someone to do something for you. In this case, you can use some of the same phrases with the same levels of formality. We mentioned can, could, or might. As I said, might is very formal. That's why we're not including it here. So for example, can you bring the check, please? That's something you can say in a restaurant to the waiter. Or could you bring me the check, please, if you want to be a little bit more formal. It all depends on the situation and how formal you want to be. But it is exactly the same as what we already mentioned. Don't forget that our verb goes in base form. We have other phrases. For example, would you mind? Which we just mentioned. And in this case, we would use it differently because you're asking for a favor. That's why you would need ing. Here we have an example. Would you mind sharing your work with me? Or would you mind sharing your chips with me? Would you mind moving a little? Okay, then we have another phrase, which is, do you think you could? Here we have an example. Do you think you could share your work with me? Do you think you could move a little? Do you think you could open the door? And then we have, would you? Okay, in this case, it's also polite. Like, would you share your work with me? It's more of a request, a favor. Would you move a little, please? And be careful. Notice the conjugation of verbs, as I already mentioned. Remember that after modals like can, could, would, might, or may, the verb always comes in base form. So be very, very careful with that. All of these are modals. Would you, whenever you're using, for example, would you mind? That's a modal. Can, could you, may I, okay? So verb goes in base form. Here we have some examples or some dialogues. Like, could I speak to you for a second, please? Sure. Could you please stop smoking? Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Or would you mind if I open the door? Not at all. I want to go in. Here are some examples of dialogues that you can use and some answers. Now for our next topic, which is indirect questions. Here we have a little conversation between, let's say, a student and a teacher. So here we have one, like it says, excuse me, could you tell me where the extra practice resources are? Certainly, it's in the online platform, here. Oh, thank you. And do you know if there's another way in which I can practice? Yes, you can look for more exercises online. There are tons of them. Oh, thank you very much for your help. I will look for them. Now, in this dialogue between a student and a teacher, there are two kinds of indirect questions. And they are in bold. You can see them here. Like, could you tell me? Do you know if? And we use them to be very, very polite when we need something. We can use them with teachers, colleagues, peers, people on the street, people we know. Remember, being polite is not a matter of formality, it's just a matter of being kind to each other. Now, how do you identify an indirect question? This is very, very easy. Just like with polite requests, all you have to do is add a phrase, but you need to be super careful with word order and the use of auxiliaries. Polite requests are very simple because most of them are using modals. But in this case, you need to be careful with word order. Let's see why. The first thing for indirect question, or the first kind of indirect question that we can have, is having yes and no questions. For questions whose answer is yes or no, we only need to add the word if and follow the structure. Subject, verb, and complement after the introductory phrase. This is not a question, so the auxiliary does not go first. Here we have it, 3 different examples. Are you Mexican? We answer this question with yes or no. And the indirect question would be, can you tell me if you are Mexican? So in this case, the introductory phrase is, can you tell me? Can you tell me if you are Mexican? Then we have, did he go to Cancun? Can you tell me if he went to Cancun? If you see in both cases, we have if, subject, and immediately we have the verb to be. If we're referring to something in past, we are using the verb in past. There's no auxiliary did, it disappears because we're following the structure of an affirmative sentence. This is no longer a question. We also have, does she travel a lot? Can you tell me if she travels a lot? In this case, again, we added the S because we are following the structure of an affirmative sentence. You no longer need an auxiliary. Let's move on to the other kind of question, which is WH question. For WH questions, all you have to do is add the introductory phrase, then the WH word, and again, the word order of a sentence, subject, verb, and complement. Check this out. Why are you here? And then our introductory phrase is, can you tell me? You just need to add a WH question. Can you tell me why you, subject, are verb here? You do not need to change the word or you do not need to change the word order so that it is like a question. It is a sentence. So subject, verb, complement. Where did you go yesterday? Just like in the other one, did disappears. Can you tell me where you went? Because this is in past. Yesterday. And when does she take yoga? Can you tell me when she takes yoga? We use yes because does disappears. This is a sentence. Some introductory phrases you can use is like in the examples we saw, it was can you tell me? You can also use could you tell me? Like could you tell me if you are coming to the party? Do you know? Do you know what time it is? Or I wonder. I wonder if my mom will call me later. You can use these phrases both for yes and no questions and for WH questions. Just remember that for yes and no questions, you need to use if. And again, super important, use a word order of a sentence. Do not use the word order of a question. If you say, could you tell me what is the time? This is incorrect. Why? Because remember, subject first, verb after. Could you tell me what the time is? This is the correct word order. Here we have another example or some dialogues. Do you know the name of our math teacher? Yes. Her name is Sue Travis. Or, oh no, I missed the train. Do you know the next time that the train will come? Yes, I believe it will come again in 20 minutes. I wonder what the world record for the fastest runner is. Let's look it up on the internet. And that would be it for today. Please practice and do the exercises that you have for this week. Thank you.